I've been married to Joseph for 20 years. With our son recently reaching adulthood, I felt like I was finally done raising our son. I thought we could spend our days together as a married couple. Hey, how about a week-long trip for the first time in a while? What? Oh, of course we can't take a trip. We're always together at home, right? It's the same thing as going on a trip. We haven't taken a trip together since our son was born. I'm about to retire. I've got to save for retirement while I can still work. If you want to travel, go with your friends. It's nice to be a stay-at-home wife, isn't it? You'll be able to spend more time at home once our son grows up. I wish I could be a housewife too. My husband returned to his room after speaking sarcastically to me. My son had started living alone, so it's just me and my husband. My husband refuses to go out with me or travel with me. He refuses to go out with me, and nowadays, he won't even go shopping anymore. He goes to work during the week, and we don't spend much time together. I was wondering if I'm still embarrassed after all these years. I didn't particularly care that my husband was refusing. One day I went shopping alone and came back to my house. I heard voices in the living room. When I checked to see if anyone was here, I found my son and my husband in the middle of a heated argument. Have you no shame in cheating on mom with a younger woman? Age has nothing to do with this, and she's the one who came on to me. I didn't do anything wrong. Don't play with me. You're messing with my girlfriend. I'll never forgive you, even if you're my own father. My son tried to grab my husband. I quickly intervened and stopped them. What's wrong with you two? Fighting out of the blue. My son seemed to calm down a little when he saw that I was home. My husband was sitting in a chair in the living room with a disgusted look on his face. Once the two of them had calmed down a bit, I asked my husband why they were arguing earlier. You sounded agitated. What was going on? I will never understand what happened if you both won't tell me. Why are you two fighting? After I questioned my husband, he started to bang loudly on the living room desk. Why should I be questioned by you? You're a stay-at-home mom. I was so surprised to see my husband enraged that I froze. Seeing this, my son took a breath and said to me, Mom, you two should get a divorce. Dad had an affair with my girlfriend. What? It seems he was at the bar where she works. He said she begged him to exchange contact information with her. I heard she reluctantly gave him her number. She was also told that he wanted to meet her and go on a date together. He said if she didn't meet with him, he wouldn't approve of a future with me, so she had no choice but to see him. I had no idea that the woman I was having an affair with was my son's girlfriend. I was just amazed at the cartoonish turn of events. Dad, you owe me and Mom an apology. It's not my fault, so why should I apologize? Can you stop acting like an idiot already? When they started arguing again, my husband silently took out his wallet and phone, and he ended up leaving our home. I was terribly upset inside. I realized that the reason my husband was reluctant to go on a trip when I proposed it to him was because of the affair. I became calm when I realized that the reason my husband was not interested in the trip was because of the affair. I think you should divorce Dad, Mom. Yeah, I can't live with someone who cheated on me. I have proof that Dad is cheating on you, so let's get your stuff together before he comes home. My husband had left home, but all of his clothes and other things he needed for work were still at home. Before my husband returned, my son and I started to compile evidence of the affair. Early the next day, at 6 a.m., my husband came home as expected. He probably came home at a time when we were not awake. He was planning to leave the home again with his luggage. He saw me and my son in the living room. My husband couldn't believe it. What? You're already up? Why don't you just tell me what you want and I'll get my stuff and I'll be out of here? I only have one requirement. I want a divorce. Why is a housewife talking down on me? What are you talking about? You cheated on me. I'm going to make sure you pay me alimony. I told you I'm not cheating on you. I have photographic evidence and all the messages you've been exchanging. You keep telling us you didn't ask her out and that she came on to you, right? And that you were forced, so it's not cheating, right? My husband began telling senseless excuses. Who the hell do you think you are, asking for a divorce from the man you've lived with 20 years? Don't you know how hard I've worked to provide for you and our son? My husband seemed to be taunting me. I told my husband something that I had never said before. I'm the one who has been taking care of our home. You didn't help me with the housework or childcare. You've given me all sorts of reasons to go out drinking, and lately you've been talking about how we need to save for our retirement. You said you were going to work late, and then you end up going out and having an affair with a young woman? I'll make sure you pay me alimony." And I showed my husband the photographic evidence of the affair that my son had collected. "This is different. A new kid who came into the company. She asked me to teach her how to do the job." He came up with another excuse, and he didn't seem to have learned his lesson at all. "Even if you yourself deny the affair, we have all these photos to prove it. If we go to court, you won't get away with it." "Court? We both want a divorce, so why can't we settle this peacefully?" When I mentioned the idea of a trial, my husband seemed quite impatient. I continued to talk. "This isn't a peaceful divorce. You are denying the fact that you cheated on me. I'll make sure we get a divorce through a lawyer." Okay, in that case, I admit I had an affair. So please don't take me to court. You just said you admitted to cheating on Mom. I made sure I recorded it on my phone. If I admit that I cheated, we won't go to court, right? You don't have to record it. What are you talking about? Just because you admit to cheating on your wife doesn't mean you can get a peaceful divorce. It's not quite a trial, but I'm willing to go through the divorce mediation process. Huh? What do you mean? My husband didn't understand what it meant and seemed irritated. We both want a divorce, but we don't agree on alimony, do we? In that case, we'll discuss alimony and property division with a third party. My husband seemed to be nodding his head, as if he finally understood. So I have to pay alimony even if I admit to cheating on you? Of course you do. If you admit to cheating, did you think you wouldn't have to pay? It's not that easy. My husband was absent-minded for a while, but after a few hours, he packed up his belongings and left the house. After that, my mother-in-law called me. She told me that he was staying with her in-laws. I told her honestly that my husband had been having an affair. "I'm so sorry my son did that. If you ever have any problems in the future, you can talk to me about it." Until our divorce is finalized, my mother-in-law said she was going to keep an eye on my husband. A few days later, I completed the divorce mediation process with my son helping me. As a result, my husband was found to have been unfaithful and he was charged alimony. "I know it might be hard from now on to be on your own, but if you ever need anything, just call me, okay?" It was very reassuring to hear my son say that. A few months after the divorce, the alimony that was supposed to be paid had not been transferred to my bank account yet. I had told the bank to transfer the money every month on the designated date, but there was no indication that the money had been transferred. I tried to contact my husband, but his phone was disconnected. I had no choice but to contact my husband's workplace, and I discovered something shockingly. "I'm very sorry, but I checked with his boss. I checked with his supervisor and found out that he retired 5 years ago." My husband had retired from his job 5 years earlier? I called my son in a panic. "Well, I think his insurance card changed about 5 years ago, but I was in high school, so I don't remember it at all." "Well, that's right. I'm pretty sure that's when it happened. I remember your father saying something about a change in the company's insurance policy." "Anyway, you said you can't reach Dad, right? I'll look for him too. You should try calling Grandma." "Okay, I'll call you if I hear anything else." After the call with my son, I immediately called my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law answered with one call, and I explained the situation to her. "I didn't know his job had changed either. I'll try to contact my son too." After a few days of looking for my husband, my son visited my home with a woman who is a friend from his college. "I thought a lot about finding my father. I thought this would be the fastest way." My son showed up with his smartphone, and he opened up a certain dating app. "Are you saying that you're going to use this dating app to find your dad?" Yes. Since he likes young women, I thought maybe he would be signed up for it. I heard that people in their 50s and older are using it these days. I saw on social networking sites that people are using dating apps to find out if someone is cheating. I thought it might be worth a try, so I asked my friend for help. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this." "Your son told me a little about your situation. Don't worry, I won't say anything." "I'm sorry I put you on the spot, but you're helping me out. Thank you." I watched as they tried their best to find my ex-husband on multiple dating apps. A few hours later, they were able to find an account on one of the dating apps that appeared to be my husband. "Okay, I finally found him. Let's send him a message and see if he really is my dad." Daniel's friend got a reply right after sending him a text, and then I saw the picture attached to the message. My son and I were able to immediately confirm that it was my husband. Glad you found him. Now let's set up a date and time to meet. Mia sent a message that she wanted to meet my husband. He replied, I'd like to meet you too. It made me sick to think that this is how he's been cheating on me all this time. Just being able to track down my husband was a relief to me and my son. Well, we'll meet next Friday at 6 p.m. in front of the station. Mom, if you don't want to see him again, I'll go alone. No, don't worry about it. We're going to have him pay full alimony. I was very happy that my son was so considerate, but I had to tell my husband directly. On the day of the appointment, my son and I met in front of the train station. When it was time to meet, my husband showed up. He seemed to be checking his smartphone several times. Mom, let's go. And so me and my son and my husband went to the meeting place. My husband was looking at his phone the whole time we were waiting. He didn't see us until we got closer, and I said to him, Hey, who are you waiting for? He looked up as soon as I said the words, and then he turned pale. Why are you here? You're meeting up with that girl from the dating app, right? She's not coming here. Could it be you've tricked me? Are you having so much fun toying with me? My husband shuddered, trying to control his anger. You remember what we talked about in mediation a few months ago. Well, there's a lot of people here, so let's talk somewhere else. I suggested we go somewhere else, but my husband didn't budge. My son called out to him to move, and he started screaming. Stop it! I'm not moving from here. You want me to pay alimony anyway, don't you? I can't pay you. That's why I'm running away. Just stay out of my life. My husband said that and tried to run away, but he couldn't run since my son grabbed his arm. I was appalled at my husband's behavior, but it would have been meaningless if I had let him get away with this. You're not sorry for what you've done. I am sorry. I quit my job. I don't have any money. How can you even begin to ask for alimony from someone like that? Why would a guy with no money be on a dating app? Why are you trying to date younger girls? I know you left your job, and I know you've moved on to another company. How do you know I changed jobs? Because I lost contact with you. I called your former employer, and they told me that you had retired 5 years ago. I remember that your insurance card had changed around that time. I found out that you changed jobs, so I'm going to make sure that you pay me my alimony. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that I changed jobs, but I really don't have any money right now, so I can't pay you alimony. If you keep saying that and running away, I will be forced to suppress your property through the court. There's no way you can do that. Because you're still working, you probably have a monthly paycheck in the bank. We discussed alimony before. If you refuse to pay it, we can enforce it. I'm sure the mediator talked about it too, but you don't remember. When I mentioned enforcement, my husband remembered. He looked grumpy and said, I earned that money. Damn. My husband sat on the ground, nodding his head. In a small voice, he mumbled bad things about me and our son. I don't want him sitting on the ground in a public place. Just when I was thinking that, someone came along. Oh, did the conversation end already? Sitting on the ground like that? How embarrassing. Why are you here, Mom? I got a call from Hannah. She told me she was meeting you today at this time. I had contacted my mother-in-law in advance about meeting my husband today. My mother-in-law is a pretty busy person, so I didn't expect her to show up. Let's continue our discussion in a different place. We'll move to a different location. With that said, we followed my mother-in-law. We went into a conference room in the building. The moment we entered the conference room, my husband started pleading with my mother-in-law. Mom, I really don't have any money right now. I can't pay alimony to Hannah. I promise I will pay you back. Just loan me the money first. The reason I lost contact with you, it was because you didn't want to pay me alimony. I can't defend you, no matter how much you're my son. You should at least pay the alimony with the money you earned yourself. Why would you give up on me too, Mom? I worked my whole life to provide for my family. You've always been too busy with your work. You've always forced Hannah to take care of the house and raise Daniel just because you were too busy working. A woman would not forgive someone who is cheating on her outside the home. Even if you're my son, I don't want to support you financially. If you don't have enough money at this place you're currently employed, why don't you at least get a second job instead of playing with women? I'm not asking you to give me money. I'm asking you to lend me money. Why don't you just trust what I'm saying? My husband was upset with my mother-in-law. Seeing him like that, the three of us had no choice but to give up. I don't remember raising him to be a selfish son. If he doesn't realize it's his fault, there's nothing I can do. What are you talking about? I'm just asking you to lend me some money. I don't want anything to do with you ever again, so I'm disowning you. Huh? What does that mean? It means I'm severing all ties with you, and you're no longer my relative. From now on, you'll be on your own. You have to pay your own alimony too. Then my husband started to panic. Wait! You need to reconsider this. Cutting off your son? That's a terrible thing to do. I don't think someone at your age should be begging their mother for money. Fine. I'll pay the alimony by myself. Just please don't disown me. Even though my husband begged and pleaded, my mother-in-law would not accept it. When my husband realized that his mother was serious, he finally gave up. Hannah, I've been the president of my company until now, but it's about time I had a successor. I thought it would be better if we were related by blood if possible. I'm thinking of having my grandson take over. Saying that, she nominated my son to succeed her. Originally, my mother-in-law was a famous female president who built up her company in her lifetime. When I was first married to my husband, I told him that eventually I would let him take over the business. But now that her husband had turned out like this, she decided to let her grandchildren take over the business. My husband was astonished when he heard this. That's not what you told me. Originally, it was supposed to be me who would take over the business. You'd rather have my son over me? If you had been good enough, I would have let you take over, but you can't even afford to pay alimony. Look at you. You're being so lax. I decided I couldn't let you take over. Besides, I'd rather let someone who cares about their mother take over the company. I said I'll pay the alimony. I'm going to do my best now, too, so please reconsider. It's obvious that you're going to cheat on again at a different time. You should reflect intensely on what you've been doing. My husband didn't say anything more back to his mother. He just looked down with a blank stare. I didn't ask how you felt about this yet, Daniel. Would you be willing to take over? I think I'm up for the challenge. How about it, Mom? Yes, if it's something you want to do, I'll support you. Then it's settled. My husband was listening to my son and mother-in-law talking. He was sobbing from frustration that he could not be the president. After that, my husband couldn't rely on support from his mother. He really worked overtime and took his job seriously, but the whole company found out that he had forced a new female employee to go out to dinner with him, and that made people in the office hate him. He ended up quitting his job because he didn't feel comfortable working at the company anymore. I've heard that now he's working part-time. He lives a poor life in a one-room apartment. My son has officially decided to work for my mother-in-law's company after graduating from college. If he can do his job well, he will eventually become the president of the company. I'm currently enjoying living alone. Next week, I'm planning a trip to a hot spring with my friends. For all the hard work I've done as a housewife, I'm going to be having as much fun as I can.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?" "We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs. Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me." If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.